BC Premier John Horgan has the province on a dangerous road, writes Laura Jones of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. Canadian Press. Darryl Dyck. British Columbia Premier John Horgan continues to defend his opposition to the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion on the grounds that it is his job to do what's in the best interests of British Columbians. But whose interests are really being served by continuing to create mayhem and uncertainty around a project that has federal approval? Premier Horgan talks about gaps with respect to the federal government's ocean protection plan. If that really is a concern, he should spell out what those gaps are so they can be addressed by what looks like a willing federal partner. Or is there another agenda here? One that's not about protecting BC's coast but rather about stopping this project at all costs. This would not, by any stretch of the imagination, be in BC's best environmental, economic, or Canadian interests as a member of Confederation. Time for British Columbians to look at whose interests are really being served, the people's, or the Premier's, when it comes to the most basic things that British Columbians care about: the environment and the economy. Most share Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's view that the two go together. It would be irresponsible to proceed with a project that does not have adequate environmental protection in place. It would be equally irresponsible to say no to projects with strong economic benefits and high levels of environmental protection. Indeed, it's hard to make the environment a priority when you don't have a job. This is why some of the poorest countries have some of the worst environmental records. A strong case has been made for the Trans Mountain expansion project on both economic and environmental grounds. Environmental wins include less oil being shipped by rail, $500 million of new money going into a stronger ocean protection plan on the West Coast, and $1 billion over 20 years for community environmental projects from the project proponent. All of these benefits, in addition to the federal government's climate action plan, depend on the project going forward. More subtly, not accepting the pipeline decision on the Kinder Morgan expansion undermines the great Canadian tradition of compromise. Accepting a decision after extensive consultation, even if it doesn't go your way, is part of that. Ends justify the means behavior when decisions don't go your way is not. The latter approach threatens to further polarize environmental decision-making in a way that won't ultimately be good for the environment. On the economic side, the jobs and government revenue that come from big projects matter to communities across this province and country. Is it in the best interests of British Columbians to throw away $5.7 billion of government revenue? That money could pay for everything from MRI machines and teachers to new roads, social housing, and other priorities like getting rid of tolls on bridges and affordable daycare. Then there's British Columbia's place in Canada to consider. Whose interests are served by creating an unquantifiable risk for a project that went through unprecedented consultation and has been approved? Thumbing a nose at federal jurisdiction? Landlocking Alberta's oil? Leaving billions of dollars a year on the table because we can't get the best price for one of our major resources? Creating problems for Saskatchewan farmers who can't ship their agricultural products because rail cars are being used for oil? Putting a chill on Canada's investment climate that threatens to lower living standards for everyone, putting some people out of work and preventing others from getting jobs in the first place. How is any of this in the interests of British Columbians? It's time for British Columbians to take a good long look at whose interests are really being served, the people's, or the Premier's. If the real problem is some yet-to-be-disclosed gap in marine protection, the Premier needs to spell it out so a reasonable path forward can be found. That's leadership. Right now he has the province on a dangerous road. It may serve his short-term political interests, but it definitely does not serve the interests of British Columbians. Laura Jones is Executive Vice President and Chief Strategic Officer for the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. Follow her at twitter.com/CFIB.